from wherever you are calling in from. We're really excited to see you here. It was nice to get to actually see some people coming in. We've got video enabled on this one, which is sometimes unusual, but lots of familiar faces, and really, really excited to kind of get your thoughts on tech trends for nonprofits in 2026. And Kevin and I are both going to be sharing a little bit of what we think is coming and how we got here. So for those of you that I haven't met, my name is Brynn Anderson. I'm the VP of Product here at Traction Rec. I have been in the Salesforce ecosystem for a very long time. It's been at least 20 years, and just been watching this evolution kind of come to AI and have some thoughts about it that we thought we would share today. And then I'll let Kevin Martyn introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Brynn. And yes, hello everybody. Good to see some familiar faces. For anyone that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, Kevin Martyn is my name. I'm a solution engineer with Traction Rec, and that makes me very lucky. I get to work with Brynn and the product team. I get to work with our developers internally, but I also, most importantly, get to work with our community customers, and really understand like some of these trends we're going to discuss today. How does that sort of translate to day-to-day for what you're seeing your communities? Bit of background. Back home in Ireland, I worked with Salesforce for a short period as a solution engineer, and also as a sort of AI or Einstein specialist for those markets in the UK and in Europe. And along with that, more recently, I was lucky to attend Dreamforce in October in San Francisco, where I got to meet a couple of faces here and hang out for a little bit and understand, what's new from that ecosystem, not just for this year, but for the year to come. So some interesting insights from all of that I'm really excited to share. So great to see everybody.
Yes, we just wanted to take a second to say thank you so much for joining us. We know this is an incredibly busy time of the year for you, between budgets, membership drives, pledge drives, getting ready for summer camp registration. So we really appreciate this. We hope we make this time worthwhile, but if not, then definitely feel free to ask questions in the chat. And if you have specific things that you're looking for kind of our thoughts on, or thoughts of other people that are attending this as well, it's open to everybody. So appreciate that. What we're going to be covering today. So we'll talk a little bit about the journey to today. We know there's a bit of a, like, the primary topic that we're going to be talking about is AI. Just AI is everywhere. It's coming in all different forms. And but it feels like it came as a giant wave over the last year, but just wanted to get grounded that this has kind of been on its way for a while, and just you already have been using AI. So just kind of get a little bit into that. Salesforce is our partner, so we want to talk about just some of the interesting things that are coming out of them that we think would be really beneficial for nonprofits to be aware of. Kevin just went to Dreamforce and I got to see this very firsthand. But we've been partnering with them for years on kind of the AI initiatives, as well as just general platform functionality. We're going to talk a little bit about where we're at as far as our AI journey and what we have in our product that's available today, as well as what's coming in the near future, and just the general vision of what we're trying to accomplish with our AI journey with this product. And we want to leave you with a few key takeaways that are just a little bit like, if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, how do we break this down into something that's more achievable? What are some of the trends that we're seeing within our customers that on how they're either getting started or they're into this journey? So we have just a few thoughts around that as well. All right. So the journey to today. So this one's a little bit like just level setting. But if we get into the next slide, we've been on this journey for a pretty long time. AI is very, very fueled by data collection and the ability to kind of harness that data. So when we look at kind of the business problem that each of these different, I would say, eras of this journey we're trying to solve. So the beginning of this was really this recognition that we need to collect a lot more data on our customers. And a lot of that was driven by how do we offer, like all of this is kind of driven to how do we offer that more personalized experience. And the evolution from that, oh, we're going to collect all of this data and we're going to collect more and more and more of this data, whether it be the surface level data, metadata, there could be audit logs, all of these different forms, is we went into this era of kind of like, oh, wow, now that we have all of this data, it's really getting messy because it turns out that this data doesn't just get collected and then go stagnant. We want it to make sure, we want to make sure that it has a life. So we kind of went through this like cleansing and management era. Say this is probably more the like 2005 to 2010 time frame, just to give this some time. And then as people got used to managing this data and interacting with this data, it became really around making sure that it was real time. I remember all of the like moves from, okay, we're going to batch process this on a weekly basis to, you know, it really would actually be more beneficial if we had this data available in our users' hands in a more real time way. And then we wanted more visibility into this data. Hey, this actually turns out to be really handy for my job, and I want to have visibility into that. But we need to make sure that it's secure and only the people that are appropriate to get that data into their hands are getting access. So security became a lot more sophisticated. Integrations became a lot more sophisticated as people wanted that visibility. But again, the volume of data just became a little bit overwhelming. So then you see this emergence of kind of analytics and UX tools. And all of these are kind of overlapping a little bit, but you really see this emergence of kind of the tableaus and all of the different tools that were like Power BI, et cetera, that we see kind of in the nonprofit industry. And then so last kind of bring us to where we are today is artificial intelligence. And there's really been kind of this like conflict between collecting more data, but presenting a really easy to use user interface to the right. So basically putting that data in the right person's hands at the right time. With the rigidity of the user interfaces that we use today, it's been a little bit difficult to find that like right balance between how do we collect as much as we can to present that personalized experience, but at the same time, managing that user experience within our existing kind of tools. So you see artificial intelligence kind of evolve from this conflict. If you just go to the next slide. So how has this technology grown with your missions and what is it enabled within organizations? This is probably all going to be very like, yes, we're all kind of on the same page. So more detailed insights into program offerings. Like we see our customers kind of tuning their program offerings from year to year as they look at what was successful, what capacity was left over, how did we have wait lists, etc. We had optimizations of memberships to better serve the community. We see a lot of transitions in membership types as people are kind of looking at their membership types and understanding, okay, this one seems to be working for our members, but these other ones maybe aren't. Let's try and find some happier balance to make sure that we're serving them in the best way that we can. A lot of data that's being collected can be really, really helpful for donor campaigns and fundraising initiatives. So being able to take these kind of more personalized approaches with campaigns has also been really, really helpful as we have these different this access to all of this data. Ease of delivering regulatory reporting. As we know, regulatory reporting isn't one size fits all. So being able to tune all of the reports that need to be produced and trying to like collect those and be able to distribute them in a timely fashion without having the heavy lift that we historically have seen. That's been another thing that these systems have been incredibly helpful in delivering. As well as increased security in childcare and camp programming. We see, like, if you think of childcare and camps 30 years ago to what is kind of expected today around collecting data around kids, being able to check them in, what programs are they participating in, making sure that the person that's picking them up at the front door at the end of the day is the right person and the appropriate person. All of those have been benefiting from these systems. And then the last is just being more responsive to the financial needs of your community. So being able to kind of tailor financial assistance to each individual household as opposed to applying kind of a blanket format across the community. So these are kind of things that we've seen like within the existing technology that are all capabilities that people are leveraging today. But as we evolve into kind of this AI era, we see a bunch of different categorizations kind of emerging within this AI space. AI is being used very broadly in kind of all realms, but a couple of categories or four categories that we've really kind of honed in on are, so it's the content creation. We've been seeing tools emerge around content creation, some good, some bad, and Kevin will get a little bit more in depth with just what those examples are in a bit, but content creation kind of is across the board. So it can be like have a very simple kind of use case here where you have very, very targeted email content for a donor outreach campaign. So instead of trying to figure out one campaign message or one piece of content that's going to be distributed to many, you can actually do campaigns that are very, very tailored to the individual so that you're hitting kind of that exact message that we think is going to actually make that donor convert into somebody that's actively donating to your organization. So that's one example. Content creation can really range around like images, text, emails, slides, like we've seen it, videos, podcasts, as we'll talk about a little bit later. But there's a lot of different kind of ways that this is emerging in the space. One that we're spending a lot of time ourselves on is agentic. So really being able to have kind of that conversational user interface that's a little bit beyond the chatbot that we've seen over the last decade kind of emerge. So it's really the chatbot on steroids where it can take actions, it can do actions on behalf of the user that it's co-piloting with. So one that we really like and see a lot of is that front desk staff. So they're having, when you go to the front desk, there usually isn't a front desk person that's responsible for memberships. There isn't a front desk person responsible for program registration exclusively. They have to know everything kind of all at once and be able to field those questions that the member is going to come in with. And Agentic can be incredibly helpful kind of in being able to take those questions and provide either actions or provide the front desk person with the actions that they need to take in order to accomplish whatever is needed by that member at that time. Summaries. So as I've kind of honed in on with that last slide was we've been collecting a lot of data for a very long time as a society, including nonprofits. But being able to actually, as especially that person, that member is right in front of you, getting kind of a summary of that what that person needs as far as a personalized experience can be a little bit daunting in navigating through that data. What data do I need at the right time? Sometimes like you'll have a household come in, they want to talk about registrations, they want to talk about memberships, they want to talk about their billing, all within the same conversation. So how do you bubble up all of that data into a summary that's relevant to the moment that you're in? That's one of the things that AI has just become so powerful at in being able to bring those summaries out. I mean, Slack has introduced a feature that I use all the time now that where you can catch up and basically if you have a channel that you're really far behind on, it can go and summarize that channel for you. And it's a really, really easy way to kind of keep on top of what's happening in your organization. And then the last one is predictions. So this has been around for a little while, but it requires very, very powerful analytic tools kind of behind the scenes. But things that like are helpful as far as predictions are like, is a member going to churn? We get this question all the time. Saw Jill Davison in our channel just the other day asking about this specific capability. Are they going to register for this specific program? So we have customers that have program catalogs that are about 12,000 programs deep. When somebody's going to register for a specific program, they're going to be looking for something that's really specific to their household. So how do we predict the things that are going to be relevant to that household based on what we know about them already? And then already kind of touched on this one, but donations. So getting a better prediction of where is my time going to be best spent to reach out to these various donors and to really maximize that fundraising effort. So those are just some examples of different ways that we see AI kind of being used within organizations and things that we've been kind of helping enable, as well as just looking over the shoulder and seeing people do. We wanted to take a moment to do a poll just to understand who you think would most benefit from AI in your organization at this time. So just going to give you a couple of seconds to kind of log your votes and then we'll do a readout.
Seeing some votes in for others as well, so feel free to pop those suggestions of stakeholders, demographics that you might see within those broader categories that you're willing to share. I'm curious to hear where those thoughts are coming from.
Yeah. All right, the poll has ended. So yeah, really interesting. So we've got 61% believe that members would very much benefit from AI. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but we agree. That's kind of where we've started as well. And then next up is front desk at 36%, operations at 29%, executives at 25%, and then we've got 7% for others. So really, really interesting. We'll talk about this a lot more in depth. Really excited to see that number, frankly, because that's how we've prioritized the way that we're approaching this and the personas that we're tackling first and then later. But yeah, thank you so much for participating in the poll.
Good stuff. Well, Brynn, thanks for giving us that level set and that sort of that perspective. I think it's important to have that grounding. We've got somewhere around sort of 50 people on our call here, and I can bet that most of the associations here are at a different stage of that this maturity journey, be it sort of data, be it AI focus, be it implementing these tools or policy forming. So it's really good to get that level set. What I want to do now is talk a little bit of where we're at. I think what we are seeing right now in the industry and in this space is lots and lots and lots of AI use cases emerging, right? And some of those are not so great. Seeing some well sort of documented examples of things like drive-throughs at Taco Bell that are easily cracked by strange orders, right? I think this is a classic example. You go up, you order 18,000 waters, and then the whole system kind of goes kaput. We're seeing some good examples, right? One that really stood out to me is a company called Heidi, which is like a physician's note taker, right? Most doctors or health workers can spend upwards of 70% of their time charting, writing scripts. And Heidi is something that can support and reduce that amount of time, working with and within rigid compliance requirements within that industry. And the end result of that is, more time with patients, which I think you can probably agree with is a universally good thing. And then right in the middle, you've got some that we're still not certain if it's good or if it's bad. It's just so new. Things like Sora coming from ChatGPT, where you can kind of go in and you can make your wildest dreams come true. You can rewrite the history books, if you really, really want to, even if that sort of vision that you have is a little bit out of left field, right? But just wanted to give some examples of that. There's a whole host more we could have included here, but really, what does this all mean? Really, the way we see it, we're on the cusp. We're on this cusp of a revolution, right? When you're on that cusp, there's a lot of experimentation. Some of that experimentation comes out as good, some maybe not so good, and some just in that sort of strange category, like we've just seen there. As well as that, on the people side, you see people being hired into roles that are net new, that we've never seen the title of before. You're seeing changes in that same workforce, from steady jobs that have been sort of key core component of that data journey and of that AI approach for years. And you're seeing that in recent weeks from some larger players in the tech space. So lots of experimentation, and kind of what comes with experimentation is speculation, right? How are you supposed to know what is going to be good and what is going to be bad. Especially when every new tool is touted as the next big thing, right? I think back 10 years ago, a really common phrase that we would have heard is, this new tool is the Uber of X, or, it's the Airbnb for Y. Okay. That modern version of that, so what we're hearing is, ChatGPT for this, or, this is the Google Slayer sort of thing, right? So lots of that same speculation in a slightly different flavor. For the end user, what that really means is a lot of noise, and it can be really overwhelming, right? Now, within that noise, we are seeing some broad industry trends emerging. And within those trends, that sort of trend towards success, towards the Heidis of the world rather than the Taco Bells of this space, where we're seeing that sort of success being more consistent, is where these projects are following that maturity development cycle, right? We're not just we're not just resorting to something with a big splash, and more so focusing on really considering policies, considering data integrity, and really focusing on starting with the user experience. What is going to have a high value and high impact for members, for front desk users, for those different stakeholders that we mentioned in our poll. Starting with that, truly considering it, and really focusing on data being a core component of that strategy. And some of the other trends that we're seeing are, one in particular is this sort of focus or shift in focus towards embedded on platform tools. Okay. We're seeing things like design companies or design platforms like Canva and Photoshop reinventing themselves a little bit and bringing in AI tools where, rather than my AI slop example where Blue Jays win the series with the mascot hitting the home run, if I'm a marketer and I'm using Photoshop or Canva or a content producer, I can use these tools to create on-brand, on-message content, emails, newsletters, whatever it might be. I can really incorporate our brand's values, our graphic approach, and our vision to produce at a higher rate. But again, embedded within that, right? Embedded within those tools. Personally, for me, on platform note-taking tools is something that I've seen a big change in. Platforms like Zoom, like what we're on right now, or if you use Teams, the having those transcripts and seeing where those the journey that those transcripts have gone on in such a short time frame is pretty impressive. Thinking back to COVID times when these platforms were really accelerating, for me personally or otherwise, spending a lot of time on calls, getting transcripts out of these calls and then summarizing those notes, super powerful. And the accuracy level has just increased that little bit extra. We're seeing basically that consolidation from a sea of options down to, why not continue to use your embedded option instead? That can really give you that edge, particularly when we think about that agentic piece that Brynn mentioned, right? That sort of taking action as the next step, be it for emails or follow-ups or whatever it might be. But that accuracy for me, I've noticed as a big improvement. It's kind of being able to see through whatever sort of accent you might have even and be able to actually give an accurate result back, right? So, and again, just day to day, outside of the just meetings or specific use cases like marketers, things like Copilot inside of Microsoft 365, inside of PowerPoint, inside of those core tools that you may well be using yourself, or just in browsing online. How many of us now, when we go to Google something, we kind of settle with the AI summary that Gemini produces for us, rather than going into, Wikipedia or whatever the sources might be off of that. Getting that summary right on my first page, it's something that we're sort of seeing that shift towards. Again, an embedded tool. If you're a association or organization that's using G Suite across the board, that's embedded in exactly that same way. So producing documents, summarizing information in your drive. Again, seeing that shift, right within and embedded on those platforms and those tools that you're already using, kind of within your sort of tech stack as it stands. So seeing that sort of trend, seeing that sort of consolidation down from sea of options to more focused tools right within where you're working already. It's kind of one of the main trends that we're seeing as well. And again, we're going to talk a little bit about Salesforce's approach to that, show you some of the on-platform tools that they're producing, that they're iterating on as well, that they're releasing. Going to go a little bit more in depth in that as we go through today.
Yeah, and then I get to take these next two because I've lived through them. But talking about just the differences that we're seeing and how to actually develop software, develop the features and the functions that your teams need. So going back just, I would say even 15, 20 years, we're still primarily seeing a waterfall model where all requirements needed to be kind of flushed out and understood, had full business process diagrams. All of that was happening just to do a system implementation that would often take multiple years. Like there were some projects when I started this career that would take 3 to 4 years, and to think about that is kind of daunting, to be totally honest, to just with the rapid change that happens within organizations. If we look at the last 4 years, even of the nonprofit community centers that we've worked with, there's so much change that's happened over that time. So doing one of these projects, just it would be so stale by the time that we actually went to implement the software. So we've kind of moved mostly away from this waterfall model as an industry. But we went to more of an agile model. So what we've done is basically break down that waterfall model and then make it so that we can deliver very smaller chunks of software a lot more frequently, with a lot more kind of iterative change that happens kind of through that life cycle. And that worked really well. We would do 2 week sprints, we'd do 1 week sprints, we'd do monthly releases, and it all kind of made a lot of sense at the time because of the pace that we were trying to move as far as moving the needle within the business itself. Quite often it would always feel like IT was behind, but IT was really like just slightly behind in identifying the business need to when we were actually able to deliver the software. Now, what we look at with the emergence of AI is kind of this more continuous delivery model with a lot less emphasis on kind of that upfront analysis, design, planning piece. So there's a lot more capabilities that are possible, and Kevin's going to do a bit of a demo around vibe coding a little bit later, but it is incredible how much we've been able to shorten that kind of upfront design and analysis. So it takes a little bit of getting comfortable with that rapid evolution, but it really takes like kind of shifting the mindset to we're going to do a series of experiments and then see which one ends up landing versus having to kind of know what you want that end goal to look like all up front, which might change over time. So really is kind of giving that flexibility within the development space. And then if we talk about just what is IT's role, how is IT's role of evolving? This has been happening for a very, very long time where IT, like back when I started, it was very network security, servers, like who's responsible for blades, all of that other kind of hardware stuff. And there was a little bit of focus on kind of the business application level. Now there's been this real shift to kind of the business application level, and all of that stuff is still happening and important. But with that move to cloud, that was kind of the last one that we saw where it was this really big shift for kind of IT's role within an organization. Now what we're seeing is that the IT folks within the organization really have to be tight with their business owners and understanding what the business outcomes are that those business owners are trying to achieve. And the role that we see IT kind of playing, or at least with the customers that we work with, that they're evolving to very, very quickly and have all the background in as well, but really being asked to kind of hone in on is being able to understand that data and that data model and all of the complexity of that so that they can deliver that business outcome. And it's really kind of bringing the two parts of the organization together in an even closer way than what we saw when that move to cloud happened. So it's been really, yeah, really interesting to kind of see that evolution. It can be a little bit daunting, but a really exciting kind of move as well, because as we work with these organizations, we're seeing more CIOs kind of emerge and be at that kind of chief level. And then we're seeing others kind of move up in the organization as they take this place as well. bit of a controversial one to put out there. Definitely interested in seeing the chat on this one, but it's just one of the trends that we've been identifying within our own customer base. All right. With that, Kevin's going to talk a little bit about just what we're seeing Salesforce's position be in the nonprofit space. And so we're going to take a little bit of a 180 here and actually focus pretty deeply on the tech side of this.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Brynn. Yeah, so very interested. If you guys have any thoughts on those key trends, embedded apps, IT's role, change and development, curious to hear what you guys are seeing in your world. If it's resonating, if it's something that you're seeing in a slightly different way. But yes, let's take a little bit of a look at what Salesforce's options are within those sorts of themes, specifically for nonprofits. I know a lot of this is coming from Dreamforce, from just recently, so fresh off the press. First big piece of news is we've got a rebrand on our hands, of course. If anybody here is familiar with Salesforce, they love to change names. So Salesforce's nonprofit cloud is now conveniently named Agentforce 360 for nonprofits. So stay tuned to see what that will become next week. Who knows when it'll change it again, but I'm sure it'll go through a few iterations. It's an interesting one though. It shows their focus on those on-platform applications. It's in line with that industry approach that Salesforce have. Agentforce as that embedded AI tool, 360 with those connected data pieces, and specifically for users in an industry like nonprofits, right? It's kind of where that naming convention is coming from, I think. Closer to home, for Traction Rec, we are fully NPC ready. Our teams have spent time working with Salesforce and understanding how do we now leverage this industry model for community-focused organizations. Okay, if it's something that you're considering, if you're considering, what Agentforce 360 for nonprofits or NPC could do, Traction Rec is all in on supporting you in that journey. With that said, NPSP, Nonprofit Success Pack, it's a product that the community has supported since its inception. It's still used by almost 60,000 nonprofits on Salesforce today, and it's not going away. We're going to continue to support our community of customers who are delivering real impact into your communities using something like NPSP. So again, at Dreamforce last month, we took a bit of time to really understand, what does NPC or Agentforce 360 for nonprofits look like today, and how are some of Salesforce's earlier adopters of that piece of technology? How are they using it? How are they leveraging that data model? And in that sort of short time frame, I think of roughly about 3 years since NPC or the very well named 360 for nonprofits platform has been around, it's really sped up, and in that time really achieved feature parity with NPSP or with the available model today. And on top of that, Salesforce have listened and they have added some really high value nonprofit specific aspects to that platform, right? Things like volunteer management, giving that a full refresh and really thinking deeply about the management side of it and the volunteer side of that process. Things like fund accounting out of the box, and agents with specific actions. And look, we are going to, I think, save a deep dive on what those key additions that they've made really look like in a kind of comparison to a future session that we will run specifically on sort of those comparisons of data models. But this is what was presented in San Francisco last month, and let's just say there is a lot on that screen. But in terms of the industry trends that we're discussing, this is sort of some of the key highlights that we took away from this. This is really what we saw, right? And for me, the big takeaways were, again, around agents, around Agentforce, around AI applications, and crucially, applications and tools that come as standard with Agentforce 360 for nonprofits. Key areas and summaries of some of those tools, I think, first and foremost, research and analysis, thinking back to what Brynn had showed us, just spoken about around that sort of understanding, that agentic opportunity, that kind of summarizes down to, donor research, history of engagement, for a donor, are they more engaged in our capital campaigns, or are they more specifically focused on on an area of programming, or is it just a more broad support that they're providing? For me as a brand new portfolio manager or a gift officer, is there an insight that we can provide that I may not have been able to get to quite as quickly without my learned experience as a fundraiser? So again, that understanding of giving history, not just for the person, but for the person's household, are they part of a decades long donor approach? And that's sort of deeper understanding, surfacing that to the user. We saw that again expanded with some data cloud extensions. So data cloud is Salesforce's sort of centralized data tool. And what we really saw at Dreamforce was how we can use that to explore outside of your donor database for that individual philanthropist. Is there areas that we can understand in terms of propensity to give, their sort of wealth capacity, what their interests might be, and then how can we use that to really sort of supercharge that personalization, for the content creation, for summarization, for taking action. So again, tapping into some public sources and sectors for some of that information, using data cloud to really bring that in and just amplify the information a nonprofit would have already, or as a fundraiser, I would have from our own specific engagements on the financial development side. And again, in terms of agents, volunteer management, right? So for the volunteer, what that looks like is, an embedded chat for answering, questions about my shift. What time should I arrive? What should I bring with me? That's sort of that way that volunteers or a lot of us expect to be engaged with, given this world that we're moving into. And then for staff, for a volunteer management manager, this example we had of taking action, create a shift for a specific volunteer opportunity, scheduling, rescheduling, finding people with specific skills or interests and associating them with shifts that make sense that they can really have an impact on. So some interesting things. Crucially, again, as I said, these are functions and agents and tools Salesforce are shipping out of the box or as standard with these new these new nonprofit focused data models. A little bit more broadly, what else do we sort of come away from Dreamforce with? What else is Salesforce really banging the drum around? And this is where we kind of look at that on-platform collection of smart tools. Okay. The first one I think that we kind of saw was, embedded tools for end users. We talked a little bit about those for for gift officers, portfolio managers on our previous slide. What I also saw was what we also saw as a team was, for admins, reimagining setup to be more sort of chat centric, being able to take that search bar out of the top left corner, bring it right into the middle of the screen, and being able to, manage my users, manage my metadata, manage my apps and my automations a little bit more straightforward. Okay. And then within those tools, again, for things like Flow Builder, having an agent support me with that sort of development cycle, right? So as Brynn talked about, moving from waterfall right down to that more dynamic experimentation, that's kind of where we're seeing that, right? Again, right within Flow Builder, having that assistant working alongside me. For Data Cloud, unifying data across all systems. The example that we were looking at was, surfacing data about facilities, about maintenance, about your buildings or about the amenities within them. Combining that with your member and constituent information, how we can really surface that to front desk users or to members as they're either browsing online or in person. And of course, we saw a lot around Agentforce Vibes, which is Salesforce's on-platform vibe coding tool. For anybody that is unfamiliar with the term vibe coding, what that really is using English language prompts, and instead of getting a summarized email out, we get a code base produced for us. Okay, so as a business user, I can start to describe a problem or a solution that I've thought of, and I can work with something like a vibe coding platform to deliver an app or deliver a prototype of an app, for example. I've got a very small visualization here, but what I thought I'd do is just bring us through a very quick demo of what this looks like in terms of Salesforce's on-platform vibe coding tools. I will say as a disclaimer, as I pull up this demo, I'm not a developer. Okay. I think I spent 1 year in university working on programming and delivering projects. So again, this is my sort of take on that. But one thing that I really remember from that time in university when I was studying programming languages was a specific project around tic-tac-toe, produce a game of tic-tac-toe. So anybody who spent time working with languages, you may well have come across this. It's a classic sort of beginner test where you build a UI, 3x3 grid, you build out a game with just the right level of complexity without being overly complicated. And you can sort of have this quick game with a computer, right? So this is my example for today. Anybody who, as I said, is a developer, you might have memories of that yourself, or if you're like me, flashbacks to that time. And really, this what you're looking at is Salesforce's on-platform Agentforce vibes. What I've done here, again, a little bit of TV magic ahead of today, but really what I've done here is I've given the system a 2-sentence prompt: create a Lightning Web component that runs a game of tic-tac-toe. Okay, from those 2 sentences that I've given it, the system has produced a JavaScript file, a CSS file, another coding language, some HTML to go along with that, as well as the metadata for pulling this all together. Okay, now for context, when I'm not exactly a skilled developer, as I've said, but in university, this sort of project took me about a week to come up with a prototype. Agentforce Vibes produced all of those files within about 1 minute, 60 seconds. And what's more, it took it a step further. It built out the component that I could use to drag and drop this into my Traction Rec Salesforce instance. It even took my instructions around my utility item, and it produced my simple game of tic-tac-toe that I could use for working through, right? Now, what's really interesting here, I think, is you saw, 2 sentences, create the game. I didn't ask for this option for 2 players or 1 player. I didn't ask for this new game button. I didn't ask for this, whose turn or who's the winner. Basically, this vibe coding approach, what we see is it's able to take your ideas and then sort of round out the edges for your prototype, right? But crucially, what we're doing here as well is, I'll let you into the secret. This is a lot better than what I produced back in college. My version was nowhere near as nice and shiny as this. But really what I'm able to do here is, like we say, sort of code with the speed of thought in a way, but crucially doing this inside of the platform, inside of Salesforce, inside of my own sort of tech stack, having that bit of control and how we can really sort of marry those 2 together. And again, just back to Brynn's point that we saw previously, in terms of a business user and a technology user working together, right? Could a business user produce a prototype? Maybe. Could a tech user produce this exact same test that I have? Definitely. But if those 2 people are working in isolation of one another or sort of working separately, I can guarantee that, the bigger picture will be missed, right? That idea, like we said before, focusing on the user experience, focusing on, what's actually going to be valuable for our stakeholders in terms of our prototyping and our testing. That's really a key part of that. Working together and being at the table together is really crucial, considering we now have tools that can allow you to move this fast, right? That's a key, I think, part of that in terms of sort of the thinking here. Really what I wanted to show more than anything else and more than just embarrassing myself in terms of my own development capabilities was just give you a picture of this. These are tools that are available. If you're using Salesforce, if you're an admin, you have an option inside of your sandbox today to go in instead of the developer console, start messing with this Agentforce IDE. Should be available to you So really interesting. Salesforce did a lot more sort of examples of that. Mine's a super basic example, but think about where we're doing larger projects. We might have a Google document that we've scoped out the users, the impacts, the look, the feel, and giving that to that same tool, what it could then produce, what you could start to look at as prototypes, really start to have that sort of joint discussion.
Yeah, so just as we look at what Salesforce has available, so these are all things that are capabilities within your orgs today or are coming soon. Between nonprofit cloud and then the different Agentforce capabilities, it's incredible how much you already have at your hands if you're on Salesforce. With the Traction Rec package, I wanted to share a little bit more about where we were going and what's already available from us, and just the vision that we have for how we're going to be approaching or have been approaching Agentforce. So we've been at this for about a year to a year and a half. And the perspective that we're bringing is that each of these different personas that work amongst the community center or are served by the community center should have their own agent that is really kind of tailored to their specific needs, but looks across the organization and brings those capabilities to their hands as quickly as we possibly can. So we think in the terms, like as organizations, we think in terms of memberships, programs, childcare facilities, etc. Sometimes for a member, they don't know the navigation of that department. So what we're looking for this agent to be able to do is really kind of meet them in the language that but whether it be English or other languages, then meet them in the language that they speak, but also in the language that they use as far as how they want to engage with the community center. So examples being like, what is the temperature that you keep your pool at? That can be a really kind of simple Q&A that the front desk is probably asking, at least on a daily basis. But a little bit more complex is, I want to register my kid for camp next summer, and I need them to have 9 weeks of camps booked across this summertime period. And being able to navigate some of these catalogs can get a little bit daunting in that scenario, but having a conversation with an agent where that agent is then going and validating and asking deeper questions and making sure that it has the right information for being able to book that child into that camp, as an example, can be very beneficial if it's the first time that, especially, that this person is interacted with the center, or if they are looking for something very, very specific within the catalog and not quite sure how the program hierarchy works for that specific center. Another example or a persona that we see there being a ton of benefit around having agentic capabilities in your org is the front desk staff. So quite often front desk staff are seasonal, transitional, and they just answer a lot of questions. They are the front of the organization. And if they don't have the answer themselves, they have to understand who to direct the person to that's part of the rest of the team. So being able to give the front desk staff that agent that maybe minimizes the amount of time that they have to spend understanding a system, and they can just simply ask this agent questions, or being able to navigate some more complex questions that they're getting asked by the members, that this agent can help them navigate to that, such as, what is my outstanding balance? What is coming from this balance? Where are the payments? Where are the billings that resulted in this balance? Like having that navigation and a co-pilot kind of with that front desk person as they're answering all this, like these variety of questions that they get. That is something that we see being beneficial. The way that we're approaching this is really one agent per persona. So we're not looking at this as having like a membership agent or a programs agent or a childcare agent. We want a place where somebody can go and just start asking questions and get the answers that they need in order to be the most helpful to that member. And with that, I think we're going to get into a bit of a demo of what our member agent can do today.
This is Sally. Sally has 3 kids, 2 dogs, and a full-time job. Yep, life gets crazy sometimes. But one thing is for sure, the family loves the local community centre. The thing is, Sometimes booking classes can add to Sally's headaches, and a good thing turns into a stressful thing. Today, Sally is discovering a new way of doing things, the Agentforce way. To get started, Sally simply opens a new chat window and types a request. The agent listens to Sally and compares the sentiment of a request to the catalogue of activities the club offers. It then seamlessly recognizes and selects the most appropriate options and presents them. The agent effortlessly follows Sally's instruction, digging deeper and selecting the most relevant course options. Seamless exchange is driven by no ordinary bot. This agent is using large language models to see past things like colloquial phrases, spelling errors, or even multi-language inputs, focusing on what the user is trying to say and keeping the engagement moving forward. The agent then qualifies which household members are eligible for this class, based on rules like member benefits, age, and any other prerequisites required for this course. And just like that, Aaron is enrolled in youth dancing, and all Sally needs to do is settle up. She can pay right then and there using her stored payment method, or pay at the club. And there we have it. We can see that Aaron is enrolled in youth tap dance, and Sally can sit back and relax, safe in the knowledge that things might get a little bit quieter around here.
Good stuff. So, thank you, mysterious Irish person, for that lovely video. You may have seen like an example of that in our waiting room as you joined today. For anyone who hasn't seen it before, just a quick example of what those agents can do. But this isn't just something we're tooling away with in the background. This is real world technology that is being used by customers today. Namely our friends at YF San Francisco. I think I saw Troy joining there as well, maybe a few others. And again, this is their community site. This is their example of a Traction Rec agent named Bailey. And from here, I can have a chat with Bailey. I can say what temp is who at Embarcadero. Why? Again, I'm definitely not going to spell that right. But again, I can have these conversations with it. I could be looking to get registered in programs for me or for my household, or I can just be asking real-time information. But again, this is real world. I know there's other customers on the call here who are using or are in conversations with us to get something similar stood up. But again, simple example, as we've mentioned a couple of times today around pool temperatures, a common question to front desk staff. Think about the phone calls, the emails, the questions that this could help sort of deflect in a certain way. So again, a couple of examples of our agents in action, both in terms of registrations, but also for just that sort of front desk use case. Just to kind of bring us back to bring us back up to what we were talking about in terms of those trends today. A couple of takeaways. I think, crucially, as we said right at the start, I think everybody on this call is probably at a different stage of this journey. If you're looking at this and saying, okay, we're a little bit behind, that's understandable. That makes a lot of sense. This industry is moving at breakneck pace. But what's crucial to know is, as Salesforce or as a Salesforce customer or Salesforce-based customer, there's a lot of different tools available for you, no matter where you are on that journey. Right? If it's a case of just consolidating data right through to, an internal use case, there's lots of options for you. If you're sitting there saying, I'm ready to get started, where I would recommend or where we would recommend is looking at those embedded tools inside of your existing systems. Things like Agentforce or Salesforce, if you're using 365 or otherwise, the tools that are living inside those platforms, that's a really a good place to start inside of that walled garden. Right, inside of an area that you really have control over. And policies, governance is something we've discussed a lot on previous sessions before today. It's an ongoing conversation. What's important to know, and you've probably heard it as well, actually, honestly, in conferences that you've been to recently, a lot of discussion in those spaces we've seen. But they're your way to maintain control. There is a lot of excitement, as we've said, a lot of energy in this industry, but a good set of guidelines and of policies will allow you to keep the focus on that North Star of your members, of your key stakeholders. And again, for all of these things, starting small, have that sort of mindset where we can be curious and it'd be a good thing. But not having to reinvent that whole process. Having a sand pit where teams can be creative, try things in a sort of safe, secure environment. That's really where we're looking to support our customers. And on that note, in terms of support, we are absolutely always here for a chat, for a discussion. We'd love to to talk with you all, hear more about what you guys are doing, and offer our advice where we can, and see if we can support you no matter where you are on that maturity journey. For those who just want to kind of get familiar with what else Traction Rec are bringing out or are working on internally, one way to really sort of digest that is through our podcast. So this is something that we produce regular episodes on, really accessible way to just, again, keep the finger on the pulse on what we're doing at Traction Rec. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on most major podcasting platforms, and our episodes kind of build on the themes that we're talking about today. We have a very specific focus on the nonprofit space. So, rather than sort of a lot of other tech commentators have this sort of broader view across the entire industry, we like to sort of distill that down to nonprofit community centers specifically, and sort of create it in a more digestible way. So recommend trying it, testing it out. I listen to a lot of podcasts when I'm just knocking around the house, so really, really useful for getting that insight. And with that, I guess we'll just open up to say let's talk some more. We're always curious to understand what you guys are working on and where your thoughts are. For anything we've talked about today, embedded tools, the role of IT, that change in development, anything else that you may think on top of that. Curious to hear, as always. And really, really want to say thanks to everybody for coming along on the journey with us here.
Yeah, thank you.